So let's start the video off with a positional puzzle for a change. What's the clever move that Smyslov played to simplify this endgame as much as possible and convert it? Maybe pause the video and have a think about it. So the move he played was Queen h4. This does allow black to ruin white's pawn structure with queen takes h4, g takes h4, but because of black's lack of activity, he cannot prevent the rook coming into the position and hoovering up all these pawns. Let's say black plays knight d7, we'll play rook takes d6, knight back to f8 is the only move to defend this e6 pawn, and now h5, we're restricting black, we're preventing the king from coming out, and we'll easily convert up by either scooping up this pawn or these two pawns. If instead black plays queen d7, we can still exchange off the queens with queen takes queen d8 check, queen takes, bishop takes, and now the bishop will come back to c7 and we will pick up this pawn and convert this endgame easily. So watch the rest of the video to find out how Smyslov reached this great position. So the game starts with the Ruy Lopez, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6 and bishop a4, and the Steiner's defense, d6. This is a solid yet slightly passive opening where black will go bishop d7, and generally he'll try and put the knight on e7, fianchetto the bishop, castle, and then try and push for f5, similar to a King's Indian. And we will counter this development plan with c3, d4, attacking the centre, castling, and then trying to get the knight into the game. c3, knight e7, the Cosio defence, d4, the best move, bishop d7, and now a very prudent prophylactic move we can play is bishop to b3. Now if this knight ever moves to a5 for example, black is not threatening to exchange off our strong light square bishop. Instead our bishop is now attacking the tender f7 square, so it's very good. h6, very prudent move. We don't want to fall for something like g6, knight g5 and then just lose the game immediately. h6, knight bd2, knight g6. Now this is one of the ways black can play. He gets the knight to g6. Ultimately he wants to get the knight to f4 and then cement it there with moves like g5. We might prophylactically play g3 to just block this knight out. We go knight c4. White's main development plan is knight c4, e3, and then potentially onto f5. We can support this with bishop c2 as well if need be. The knight might also come to d5. Basically this knight on e3 is just very strong and covers a lot of good squares. Bishop e7 and castles. Now a better move white could have played is d5, then the knight can't come to a5 so it has to go back to b8, very nice. It does block the bishop in, but this bishop can just drop back to c2 and then defend the f5 square. White will play knight e3 as well, cover this f5 square very well. We're going to castle, we're going to play g3 and then we're going to start expanding on the queen side and play positionally. And it's +1 here. White didn't do this though, he played castles, makes sense, castles. A better move he could have played was bishop g5. This is quite a modern way to play. The idea is after knight takes, h takes, this rook has a nice open file and the knight can come to f4 because it's supported very well. We don't want to allow this because let's say knight f4, g3, the knight can come into h3 and black has quite a nice kingside attack. So instead we might go knight e3, right, block the bishop's attack, but black can just capture, capture. Now black's exchanged one pair of minor pieces, it's eased his lack of space a little bit. And he's got a simple plan of castles, knight a5, get this bishop off the strong diagonal and then play for f5. So black didn't do this, he went for castles, a bit more passive, knight e3 and bishop f6. This is again a solid passive move. Now I think the main thing that tripped black up in this game is he didn't want to exchange pawns, even when the situation kind of called for it. For example here, it would have been best to play e takes d4, we go knight takes, knight takes, c takes, bishop g5, and see, now white does have a strong pawn centre, but black has an active plan of attacking it and starting to exchange off some pieces, and this knight is also coming into our game. So it would have been best to play e takes d5. He went bishop f6 though, and supported it first. We go knight d5, strong move, attacks the bishop, rook e8. Now this is another very passive move. Would have been much better to play e takes d4. And then after knight takes, let's say, we have knight takes, c takes, and rook e8. Black's rook has this semi-open e file, our e pawn's undefended, so we're going to have to play moves like f3, bishop c2, maybe queen d3 just to support our centre. But black's got ideas of playing c6 and d5, and he can start to break it down. And white will be playing defensively here, which is probably good if you're black. But you went rook e8 immediately, but this allows d takes e5. Now black's problem is he can't recapture with a piece. Even though he's defending this square 5 times, the only decent recapture is with the bishop or with the pawn. Let's see what happens after knight takes e5. We go knight takes and f4. We suddenly have a strong mobile pawn duo. Knight g6 or g4, let's say. We can go h3 and the knight's trapped. So knight g6, we go e5 as a sacrifice, and then after pawn takes we can capture this bishop. The queen's tied down to the defense of the bishop, so we recapture, and then the queen's coming out to h5 with a decisive kingside attack, for example. So you can see how this pair of pawns in the centre is very powerful. So black didn't want to allow this. He played bishop takes, we took with the knight, pawn takes, and now we have the bishop pair. White can start to attack with moves like queen f3, ganging up on the f7 square. So queen f3, bishop e6, and now rook d1. This is a great way to organise the pieces. We get the queen out of the way and bring the rooks to the open file. We'll be playing bishop e3 probably and connecting the rooks. Then the bishop might come to c5 or a good diagonal like this. And we can also start to advance to the king side. Now black made a big mistake. He went bishop takes d5. The light squares are now firmly under white's control. Would have been better to play queen c8, get out of the way of this discovery, right? And then he's got ideas of pushing this a pawn, maybe getting the knight into the game this way. It's passive, but it's the best he could have gone for. The trouble is, after bishop takes, we have rook takes, queen e7, and now we're going to go queen f5. We're going to bring the bishop out, and the rook's the d file. Black cannot really challenge for the d file effectively. Queen f5, knight f8. This is a backward move, not so good. If he played rook ad8, we can counter with bishop takes h6, an amazing bishop sacrifice. G takes, rook takes, queen takes g6 check because it's pinned, for example. So the knight drops back to f8 just to get out of the way of this nasty pin. Go bishop e3, like I said, knight e6. This is a nice little manoeuvre actually, because it blocks the file for the bishop, and the knight is better on e6. Rook ad1, rook ed8, and now g3. Typically, we want to play f4 ourselves. If we want a kingside attack, we can open up the f-file, maybe get a half-open f-file for us to attack with. Rook d6, black's doubling up as well. Rook takes, c takes. Now you can see White's got such a lovely position. He's got this bishop pair. The knights are completely blocked out of the game. Look how every square that they can go to is covered. We can also just attack this weak d6 pawn. Black's never going to play d5, is he? Queen g4, we're threatening bishop takes h6. So you can see we're spreading our play between the centre and the king side. King h8, bishop b6. This is a pretty standard move that prevents the rook coming to d8. Knight b8 and bishop takes e6. F takes e6. White's playing in a kind of boa constrictor style where he's trying to take away all the key squares for black. He's trying to make as many weaknesses as possible and slowly squeeze black into oblivion. There's not much he can do here really, apart from just defend solidly and hope white makes a mistake. Now, an amazing move for white, queen h4. This is inviting black to play queen takes, which he does not do because after g takes, knight d7, rook takes d6, he has a completely losing endgame. We're up a pawn, knight f8 is the only move to defend here, and then we can just start to restrict black with h5. Our pawn structure is actually better because black's got this terrible duo in the centre. We can just bring the king into the game, to be honest, and black is just losing. So queen h4 is a very good move. Black's forced to play queen d7. You can see white's manoeuvred himself onto a better diagonal. Queen d8 check, queen takes, bishop takes, knight d7, bishop c7. Black cannot avoid losing at least one pawn. Knight c5, rook takes, and this is a winning endgame. Let's just see how Smyslov converted this. Rook c8, bishop b6, knight a4, rook takes. Smyslov allows knight takes b2 because he's going to get 2 pawns and his pieces will be better placed. Knight takes, rook takes. Black could go rook takes c4 here, but of course that just allows bishop d4. We're up a pawn and we will promote this passed pawn. So knight c4, rook e6. Smyslov manages Sorry, black manages to get rid of the strong bishop, but it's still going to be over after rook takes. Rook takes. We are a pawn up, sorry, 2 pawns up, which should be decisive. Rook c2. Now, another very nice move, h4. White is not going to try and waste time defending this a pawn, because he's probably going to lose it anyway. It's better to advance the kingside pawn majority, again, restricting black as much as possible. I cannot emphasize how much difference this makes, because after h5, the king has no easy way out of this box. Rook takes, king g2, a5, h5, a4, and now rook a7. This pawn is under attack, so this rook is now locked along the a file. King g8, g4, a3, king g3. Now, black's idea is to get the king to f8 and then try and prevent this e pawn from queening. If needs be, he can always sacrifice the a pawn with rook e2 and try and exchange it for the e pawn. White will prevent this by activating his king and playing f3 and supporting the pawn. King f3, rook a2, king e3, king f8, f3, rook a1. Now, you can see how Smyslov's now set up the ideal pawn structure on the king side. His king is now free to advance. He wants to get his king... Okay, obviously a tactic he's got to think of is a2 and then rook e1 check. He would not want to fall for this because this would lose. So he needs to get his king in front of the pawns so a check is not possible. King f4, a2, e5, king g8. Now, as long as white doesn't play king e4 and blunder rook e1 check, he should be winning. King f5, rook f1. This is too little too late because white can just go rook takes a2, rook takes king g6. We're threatening to advance this pawn, we're threatening check or checkmate. King f8, rook h8 check, king e7, and now white finishes with a great move, rook a7 check. This allows the king to come forward and take this pawn, but of course we're just going to hoover up these 2 pawns, and then 2 connected passed pawns and a rook endgame will easily win. So, an amazing strategic masterpiece from Smyslov. At every point in the game he was patient, he was restricting black, he wasn't trying to go for cheap quick wins, he took his time and slowly converted the game. So I hope you enjoyed this, hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.